I thought the King's Gambit should be the North Melbourne fan experience because having lived the year and particularly the week, you just headed into the terraces. I don't think it was your intention to stay till the end, was it?
You're breaching confidence here.
You're just going to go for a little while.
Yeah, we were. Look, my daughters wanted to go to the footy. I said, we'll go to the Kangas game, and went with a couple of other mates who were mad Tigers. So you've got to go when you're a team like that's struggling at the moment, Gerard. You have to go with a little excuse bag. You know, we don't want to ruin this today. We don't want to blow the priority pick. You know, we need to be competitive, but we don't want to be winning because we still need an extra couple of picks for this list. And then when the game started and they just kicked so accurately a goal, they were really getting convincingly beaten by Richmond. But for whatever reason, every time the ball went forward, the Kangaroos scored. So it was so exciting. And to see that the North Melbourne fans just the first half, just you get to half time and I think it was 10 goals to 3 goals, something like that. I can't remember the exact scores. 10-2 to 3-12 it was. So it was so exciting for the Kangaroos fans who hadn't had much to hang their hat on for about 6 weeks. So you're thinking, no, this can't continue. And as I said to you, I said, look, I'm really keen to go to the Carlton Geelong game. I'm heading to that. So I've probably got to leave at 3/4 time or just after. But you couldn't leave, Gerard. You couldn't leave. It was brilliant. It was. You have to keep thinking. Everyone tells me about this list, and they tell me what it's not, and what it has, and what it doesn't have, and about the priority picks and all these sorts of things. I still think there is a lot of young talent on this list, and I don't care whether the conversation around at the moment, people saying, "Oh, if you're a young coach, you should knock this back because of this and because of that and because of this." If you don't think you can make something of these young players, you are in the wrong job. You should be getting your hands on this young list. And they were the third youngest squad of the round again. 7 players under 25 games, 12 players 50 games and under. There's a lot of young talent that doesn't even know who they are yet. They've got no idea what they are as a player. Paul Curtis is going to be an absolute ripper. Phoenix Spicer, he's only played 3 or 4 games, just does some things. You go, oh, that's exciting. Everyone wants to talk about Horn Francis and where he's at and what he's doing, what he's saying, all that sort of. Yeah, you see Tom Powell do some things. You see Curtis Taylor having a crack, and then you go to that next level of player, Davies Uniacke. He's going through gears in terms of where he's at as an AFL footballer. Jai Simpkin plays his best game for some time, and everything rolls. And Todd Goldstein, I bloody love Todd Goldstein. He's just fronted up week after week for a decade, and he just tries his best. He'll stuff some things up, and then all of a sudden when the game's there to be won, he's a major part of it. So I was just wrapped for the players, and I was wrapped for the fans because I think they went there thinking, you know what, we've been hammered this week and we're going to the footy. There was only 22,000 there, and I know most of them are Richmond supporters. I get that. But for the ones that went, it was like a real badge of honour that you're there and we've played a great half, and then all of a sudden it becomes 3/4 and you find a way to win. It was a bit emotional. Everyone was thinking, what's going on here, you know? The Richmond fans were crying and the North fans were crying too. It was fantastic, Gerard.
Good for the soul those
great.
days.
You need it.
Rose had called last week, and that I guess that's the payoff for your love of a footy club gets tested, but ultimately it's unconditional. That's just who we are. It's the loyalty, it's the blind faith, and they'll disappoint you along the way, but you're there, and then you get a game like that. So great for North people. You are the King's Gambit. So I think Will Anderson is the author of Richmond-y, which was an old syndrome where there were unique and peculiar ways to lose from positions of strength. That was the way before they ironed it out and became the team of their time. The last 2 weeks suggest that old affliction is back. Jack had a wayward day around goal. Jake was a smart arts when it mattered. I had a correspondent last week, I think it was Dom, but I'll stand corrected, who cautioned that a decade ago, the week after Richmond lost the Carmichael Hunt game, they lost to North Melbourne by 4 points. It's uncanny how history repeats. Diagnose Richmond-y for me, David.
Yeah, well, Damien, you can hear the frustration in his voice, and you can see it. I mean, they were all over the Kangaroos. 67 inside 50. So the game itself, everything's in great order except for the final piece in the puzzle, and that's conversion, 11 goals, 22. And most of those, so close to goal, you almost pencil them in. I know Jack kicked 2 goals, 6. It sort of, normally you'd laugh about that. Oh, I kicked 2-6 today, and it's a bit of a joke. But when you get rolled like this against the cellar dwellers, then all of a sudden it's no laughing matter. I mean, to ensure that you put these games to bed as early as you can. Every game's a danger game at the moment.
Yep.
You've got to, the old Geelong theory. Get this job done in the first 20 minutes. When Geelong were a great power of 7 or 8 years ago, they would try and put a game to bed in the first 15 to 20 minutes and take the will from the opposition away, strip them of their energy, and then coast from there. That's what you've got to do against these sorts of teams. Now, the Kangaroos didn't allow that, and there's 2 teams at play here, obviously. I get that. But Richmond are on a different level at the moment. They had so much more to play for. They had lapses again. The co-captain, Dylan Grimes, he would feel personally like he's cost them the last 2 games. He would have to have gone to bed on Saturday night thinking, what is happening with me here? Why am I having these lapses or these when crunch moment comes, I'm off. Why am I off? So there's little doubts that creep into the individual, and then it permeates through the group. I mean, Vlauston getting outmarked, just little set-up things, playing on when you shouldn't, like you mentioned. I mean, that's just, they're basic errors, but they have cost them another loss. They should be another 3 wins on the season already, Richmond.
They should be right in the mix.
Yeah.
But they're not. They're 8th and they're vulnerable.
But they're vulnerable. Yeah, they are vulnerable. I still think they'll get there. I still think they're good enough to get there. And there's going to be a team, Gerard, that finishes 5th after a pretty good year, come up against Richmond. Because when the hammer drops on round 23, every coach will say, righto, the new season starts. And you forget everything in terms of the qualifying. There will be a team that finishes 5th that has to play Richmond, who are in great order, despite what the wins and losses sheet will say.
Maybe. I'm only a maybe on that now. I think the Herald Sun does the run home. I don't know why I look at it. But they had Richmond win. You go, what? They play Fremantle, Brisbane, Port, Hawthorn and Essendon, and they've just lost to Gold Coast and North Melbourne. I just think defaulting to the idea that they're going to run the table from here, I think it's half ignoring what's going on. Is they don't keep losing these games without good cause. So it can be, it's fun to say Richmond-y, but there's a core issue here, quite clearly.
It's a moment
leads. No, they've been coughing up leads since the start of the season, and they have blown winning positions. So I don't agree that it's just a 1 or 2 week issue. I think this has been part of their makeup. And it rears its head from time to time, and it's cost them, you say 3, I could stretch as far as 5.
Yeah,
but I don't see that it's going to be ironed out. They're going to run the table in the last 5 weeks.
No, they may not. It's very difficult to win 5 in a row. So I would be surprised if they did that. But 4 will be enough to get them in. I would rather have Richmond's problem where the mechanics of your game are in order and you have a patch where you for some reason you drop your lot. I'm no problem with that. That's not something that you need to train, to change mechanics, to put hours into. That's a meeting. That's a conversation. That's setting standards from your leadership group on field, in game, right through to training. Hey, we can't lapse at training anymore because this has crept into our game day approach. The biggest problem they've got is winning contest in their forward half. So since the bye, they're 18th in the competition. So that's a problem that I see. So they've got to start winning contest, and if they can do that and even become mid-table there, we know their power. We know their ability to score. I still think their system has just been overtaken by Geelong right now, but I still think it's one of the most dangerous ways of playing in the competition. I've got enormous faith in Richmond. I'm not spooked by the losses because I still think their game is in great order.
The pressure index, Richmond-y. Geez, Gerard, you've sent 100,000 Richmond members back into therapy
I like that one.
for your use of the word Richmond-y. Ouch, that's from Kieran, but I like Stephen Diamond Creek. Forget Richmond-y finding ways to lose. What about Collingwood-y finding ways to win?
I drove past Collingwood's training the other day and I thought, I'll pull in and have a look for half an hour. So got sprung by the coach, so I have to declare it now, Jerry. I said, what are you doing here? But they trained for the end of their training session for, say, the last, 6 to 8 minutes, just doing situational training. 30 seconds to go, 2 points up. So it was the A team versus the B team. 30 seconds to go, 2 points down, need a score. So they do it. And why wouldn't you do it? It's become a real asset for them, hasn't it?
It's a learned skill,
I
reckon, winning close games.
They're at that stage. I think it's fantastic to see the coaching of Craig McRae and the positivity of Craig McRae come out in the way they play. You can see it, can't you? They always look like they're going to score, Collingwood. Always look like they got. As soon as one possession becomes three, you think, they're going to score here. You don't feel that with a lot of teams, but they're brilliant to watch.
They're 8 in a row. I wonder if they're in the seedings.
They're in the seedings.
They're in the seedings, all right.
I've had a review overnight.
Yes.
I've got the full brief of the numbers from Hoyne this morning, and there's some shocks in there.
Okay.
I challenge your thoughts, Joe. I'm going to challenge your thoughts.
We're going to delve into that. So the debate is, what did we learn on Saturday night? We were also looking forward to Geelong and Carlton. I think the Cats handled them pretty well. I would liken the Blues a bit like to when you sit your driving test the first time and you fail. You miss the 3-point turn. You're back into the witch's hat. You missed which lane you were supposed to be in going to the roundabout. So you go, didn't quite stack up. Bit overawed in the moment. It's a big experience submitting yourself to that. So you go away, you book your next test, you do your work in the interim, lot of practice, and Carlton are already booked. They're already booked for their next test, round 22 against Melbourne. I wouldn't be too down in the mouth about the Blues. They didn't stack up to that first test. Round 18. Not a bad time to get the lesson, see what it looks like in round 22, and then see what it looks like come finals time. They're just the 18-year-old who failed their driver's test the first time around. How did you read Saturday night?
Well, to win it, you have to have a point of difference. I say that every year. You have to have a point of difference as to what you can throw at the opposition that makes them change what they do or who they are. So challenge the other coach's box to spend a week planning and the 4 training hours available for the week trying to deny something of yours. If you can't do that and they can train as normal and prepare as normal, you're gone. You can't win it. So I look at Geelong and I reckon they've got about 3, 4, 5 points of difference. And you can argue it. You can argue all of them. I'm fascinated by Jeremy Cameron and the role that he plays. 18 disposals, 11 of them become scores. He is the most potent player in the competition right now. People don't want to believe it. He plays a different role. He's not a centre-half forward. He's not a high-half forward. He's not this. He's not. He goes in at centre bounce. He got fined for running into the umpire. That's how clumsy he is at centre bounce. He has no idea what he's doing in at the centre bounce, but that position allows him to roll wherever the game goes and get a midfield matchup that he then takes to the cleaners. And so how do you coach against that? Do you have to change your midfield mix to cater for Cameron? Win for the Geelong coach's box. So all of a sudden we're challenging that player to think differently. Geez, I can't run off and play midfield here because I've got Cameron now. I've got Cameron for the next 90 seconds. And that's where he does his damage. So I look at him and I say, okay, who's got the correct plan against Cameron? I haven't seen one plan work yet. The holding defender and allowing him to do his work through the midfield doesn't work. Going with him all the way opens up space for Hawkins to go to town one-on-one. Stengel and Hawkins have become an unbelievable combo down there. They really have. And he's doing some terrific things, Tyson Stengel. And then I go to the midfield. So when I take my eyes off Cameron for 2 minutes, my eyes go straight to Blitzarves. What's he doing to Paddy Cripps? So he's 198 centimetres, 101 kilo tagger. Patrick Cripps usually monsters all midfielders. We always say, look at the size of Paddy Cripps. Blitzarves stood next to him on Saturday night and he made Paddy Cripps look small. And he just pushed him out of the way. He's a guy that can play key position fullback at all Australian standard, playing as a midfield tagger. So I was looking at some of his matchups this morning across the course of the year. So he started the year on Peter Wright and Lance Franklin, the resting Ruckman, Kosicki, and you go to the recent ones, Paddy Cripps, Christian Petrarca, Clayton Oliver, then ruck. Like this move is such a weapon. So Paddy Cripps has 17 disposals. His lowest for the year, apart from the time he came off the ground injured. Two score involvements, which is his lowest for the last 50 games. 4 clearances, which is the lowest for the year. So they disarm the clearance game of Carlton by taking out the prime piece in Paddy Cripps. Now, what do you do with Cripps if you're the Carlton coach, Gerard? You can't put him forward because if they decide to go with blitz-ups, you've got an All-Australian level defender playing on a midfielder trying to become a forward. Doesn't work. So what? You just have to roll on with it. You just have to challenge Cripps to get back. Then he gets outmarked by blitz-ups a couple of times. Mark has 20 disposals himself. So out of just absolute coaching, you disarm Carlton and turn that matchup into a strength, into a weapon. So it was with him at clearance and then get off him. Make him chase you. What's the whole Carlton setup this year has been about? Making sure Paddy Cripps doesn't have to defend.
Yep.
So he was run around by Paddy Cripps, by Mark Blitzups. So I say point of difference there, point of difference with Cameron. And then you look down back. They took 24 intercept marks.
So the intercept work of Sam de Koning, Zach Tui, Jack Henry, Mitch Duncan, Zach Guthrie was something to behold.
So the other silent killer the Cats have got at the moment is the way they're using Mitch Duncan. He's just playing that sweeping role, 2/3 of the ground. He really doesn't go inside the forward 50. If he does, you're in real trouble because he's probably got the ball in his hands, or he's getting an uncontested mark following the chain down. So I look at that and I say, well, you've now got to look at that as well. So how many things can you take off one team in 1 week? So you can't take them all away. So you've got to pick your poison. And then you've got to get it right. Because if you pick one angle and get it wrong, well, you bleed everywhere. So this is the beauty of Geelong's model at the moment. I think it's the best that they've looked for years. They've got some youngsters that are doing things. Max Holmes, we were just talking about during the break. I love the development of Max Holmes and the way they're using him. We've talked about Close before. I think he plays a significant a role of significance with this team now. And this is all without Tom Stewart. So their defence has been able to keep the two prime opponents over the last couple of weeks in Melbourne and Carlton to 55 and 63 points. So in the end, it all comes back to what you concede. But we're all talking about what they do with the ball. There isn't a component right now. They don't want for anything. They don't lack any component across the field, and they're throwing weapons at the opposition that they just can't. They just can't handle. The challenge now is to hang on to it for another 10 weeks, and still play with this bravery through a final series. Don't get tight. Don't get tight come prelim week. Come all guns blazing. But that's the challenge, and we'll talk about down the path. But right now, they're the most potent team, with possession and with plan, and they're still got that defensive integrity that challenges all teams to try and find a way. And right now, there is no way.
Yeah, you saw them earliest. You saw them earlier than anybody else, I think. I had them as that bellwether team. You had to be beating Geelong to move into contention. That might ultimately prove right. You're going to have to beat Geelong to win the flag, but not in the way that I had intended. So their evolution from those early games against Sydney and Fremantle to where they are against Richmond, Melbourne and Carlton, I think is profound within season. And maybe the full genius of Chris Scott is before us, is how you absorb where you got to and the change that you're prepared to make and then what you're rolling out within season. And as you say, it's round 18, so, what more? What more might come by the time you say don't tighten up in preliminary finals? What more might be there by preliminary finals?
Yeah, and that's a different way of looking at it, and that's a positive way of looking at it. I think they've played tight in finals, so that's what I'm waiting for. I'm not giving up on Carlton by any stretch, but it's the confrontation with their own plan that they probably had to have. Well, all right, where are the flaws? Where do we need to do? Look, there was a ruck throw-in, a ball up, I should say, on the weekend where Tom Hawkins just stood there without an opposing ruckman in a forward 50 stoppage, grabbed the ball, unopposed, and kicks a goal. And you go, well, what is that? I have not seen Carlton that unorganised for the year. And Michael Voss would have gone, well, that is our night tonight. Wiedering not thinking that he has to either take the ruck or tackle as soon as Tom takes the possession of the ball, tackle him, or demand that a ruckman be at that stoppage and give a significant effort because he's probably going to try and push you out the way and grab the ball. So all those things, to me, just say that was Carlton tonight. An off night and made to look pretty average by a star-studded team.
So I know you want to use that as the cue to explore who's the next best in the big issue, which takes in a whole lot of teams. And the forms it's a bit uneven. I was going to say patchy. That's not quite. It's a little bit uneven in behind them at the moment.
Yeah, so I'm trying to work out what's happening with Fremantle. So they were the starting point for getting up early this morning and having a look through the numbers and finding out what's going on. So what's your point of difference? What's the reason? Why do we think you can win it? What's the prime asset in your back pocket? So Fremantle, rounds 1 to 12, they were an intercepting phenomenon. So 73 intercepts a game, which is top 4 in the comp, but that was their asset. They scored plus 20 points from intercepts, by differential. So 52 points, but plus 20. So that was the way. So when you're a good side, you get picked apart. So since then, so round 13 onwards, it's dropped down to 65 intercepts, which is 13th in the comp. So 4th to 13th. And now they get the 15th reward in terms of 42 points a game, and they're losing 8 points now in intercept. So their back six are not being able to play their game anymore. So we saw Sydney on the weekend just say, if they leave you free, we kick it to the free player. And we make them defend for long periods. And then we work the ball down the ground. And they want to defend central in that defensive 50 of them. So they'll allow you to go wide. And the Swans said, let's take it. Let's take that wide mark. And just work. And we'll take the best shot at goal we can get. But let's just, if there's a 15-metre pass to be taken, let's make sure we make them defend. So in the end, what's happened to their game is quite stark. So they were plus 30 disposals, round 1 to 12, now minus 18. Plus 7 inside 50s, now minus 11. So defending like that is unsustainable through a final series. So if you have to defend with possession in hand, which I think was them for the first 3 months, and I'll cop some flack for it, I don't think that stacks up in finals. So they were conceding 62 points for the first 3 months, now 81. That's a 3-goal difference. That's a big gap. To find 1 goal in footy is big. To lose 3, to me, means you can't win it with that profile. Unless you have an elevated clearance game where you can actually dominate territory and not have to win ball back or defend the opposition's ball movement, you can't win it. So their forward half contest work is bottom 4 in the comp since the bye. So they don't win enough ball in the forward half, so then they have to defend. So I think they're in real trouble right now. And there is time, but not a lot of time. So Justin Longmuir's got his work ahead of him.
Yeah, the fact that they've lost the 3 at home is really interesting at periods. So St Kilda, Collingwood, and now Sydney from twice. Like they got the fast start, and then they got the start to the last quarter that they were looking for, which you dig down a little bit is what were the symptoms in there, and you've identified those pretty well.
I'll give you a positive one.
Yep.
So on all the metrics we track, the last 6 weeks, who do you think the best team is? So Geelong are not, they're considered number 2.
Right.
So the 4 facets we track are with possession of the footy, so your ability to move it, get it on the scoreboard, all those sorts of things. Without the footy, to deny all the positives we just mentioned, to deny the opposition those luxuries, to score differential from clearance, and then to win contest. Win contest once the ball's in general play. That's a significant one. The number 1 team in the comp right now is Collingwood.
Right.
Which shocked me. I mean, I know they're playing good footy, but their pressure game and their ability to win the ball back between the arcs is best in the competition over the last 6 weeks. Their forward half stoppage game is the best in the comp over the last 6 weeks. Their defensive half contest work, they just keep beating it cold. And it's guys like Maynard and Howe and Moore and Daicos. They've got a whole host of them. There's not just one player. It's a group. So I love what they're doing. It's hard not to be excited about Collingwood, and it's way, way, way ahead of time. I mean, in Craig McRae's wildest dreams, do you think that he would have envisaged that they would be here at round 18? I can't think, even though he will sit here and say, yeah, I know. He will sit and lie to us, Gerard. But I don't think he would have even thought that this could be possible so quickly, and I think the way they play is all consuming, but this is gathering serious momentum now. What happens if they can find themselves into the 4?
Yes.
Then it's game on. They're not far off it. So they got a big few weeks ahead of them, and who's to say they can't? I remember at the start of the year, Nathan Buckley said they can win 15 games. 15 games? What's he talking about? That they can't be winning 15 games. But gee whiz, they're not going to be far off that.
It's a special ability to win the close games, both the spirit that's involved in that, the belief, and I've always believed it is a learned skill. And in this stretch, they've beaten Carlton by 4, Hawthorn by 4, the Giants by 11, Gold Coast by 5, North by 7, Adelaide by 5. You'd say that's a profile of a team that, they're beating the also-rans just, and then they've taken care of Fremantle and Melbourne in there, and they're 8 in a row. They are a fascinating study, and no doubt they're in the seedings, as we had that big push last week from Pies fans who are going, we've been underestimated, we're being disrespected, we're being overlooked, and it's a win over the Crows at Adelaide Oval, which at face value you go, well, you should be winning that, but no, you've got to be taking it in, you've got to be watching it, you've got to be studying it. As the box score's not enough in these instances, there's something there, and then there's someone there. So we're going to get to the best bits. And blimey, were there some best bit players on the weekend?
How many hours we got? We could go all day today.
So the cultural impact that Kysaiah Pickett's game has yesterday in Alice Springs, never mind the football, which was... show me the last game with that many individual spectacular highlights. This is a rare category. Like, this is a category that belongs to Gary Ablett Sr. It belongs to Lance Frey. Individual highlights, Sr. More than 2 or 3 in a game. Kysaiah had at least 4 yesterday, which are worthy of... Kysaiah had general play right foot snap from the boundary, general play left foot snap from the boundary, out of midair, boring straight set shot, run around set shot, and on the run from 50. 6 goals, all scored differently. I don't think it would be possible to overstate what Kysaiah Pickett did yesterday. So the sheer thrill of the 6 goals, the audacious nature of the highlights, and that a young Indigenous man performed like that in the Alice, and the crowd shots that we were getting, those images, they light the imagination. And it's the sort of afternoon that the ripple effect could be felt in the next generation. It wouldn't be hard to imagine one day a young man being interviewed going, I was there that day when Kysaiah Pickett scored those 6 goals, and thought, one day that's got to be me. It was an extraordinary individual performance.
You're never too young to lead your footy club, Gerard, and they needed him on the weekend. They would have been in awful trouble without Kysaiah doing what he did, and let's be honest, he hasn't done that all year. He hasn't. I expected him to do it probably 5 times for the year. That's not a 6 goal necessarily, but a game shaping performance, and he hasn't been that player. So what a find at this stage of the year for Simon Goodwin to say, okay, Kysaiah, now mate, we need to sit down and have a chat. More of this. How do we get you to do more of this? Now that you've got that reward, you've had that game. And no doubt going to the Alice for that game would have given him an emotional lift and a deeper investment in that performance.
Yep.
But how do we now bring that to the MCG on a more regular basis, and particularly through a final series? Because he's an amazing pressure player. He's terrific. He does make you panic when he's in the area and the opposition are trying to bring the ball out. But how do we make sure that you get on the scoreboard more regularly? So that when you look at Spargo and Pickett, even Bedford, that's those smalls, they don't hit the scoreboard a lot. So they need something, Melbourne. They need something. They need a spark from somewhere. We talked about it a couple of weeks ago. They need an emotional hook or an investment or something to give. And maybe this is what they needed as a group, to be celebrating someone else apart from Petrarca, Oliver Gawn, May. This week's about Kysaiah. So maybe that's what they needed.
6 there. Luke Breust, Cam Zurhaar.
Cam Zurhaar was spectacular, Gerard. Yeah, to kick 6 in that team against good quality opposition, and basically win you the game. Yeah, would Melbourne have won without without Cozzy? No. Would North Melbourne have won without Zurhaar? No. Would Hawthorn probably still would have won, but it's just the Luke Breust discussion's a ripper. I was having a look this morning. So he's 8th all time for goal scoring at Hawthorn. Can I give you some of the names that are in front of him, Gerard?
He's in good company.
Dunstall, Matthews, Hudson, Moncrief, Franklin, Roughhead, who he'll get close to. I'm not sure he'll get Roughhead. He's probably 100 goals in front of him. But, I mean, there's some serious talent. I mean, they're Hall of Famers. So I love watching it. He's impossible to tackle. He's untackleable. He's always got balance. He's a player that if you're looking to play small forward position, you have to study. Guy that I think he was rookie list from Sydney. Like, what a career it's been. I know he's 31, so he's only going to give us a performance every now and then, but what a player he's been.
And then there's Nick Daicos. So I went to get the family coffees yesterday, and the young bloke's the barista, Mr. Burton, loves his pies, plays footy, and we were just 10 minutes on Nick Daicos. Not just the now, but more the, what's this in 3 years? What's this in 5 years? What's this in 10 years?
Yeah.
What we're seeing is it's phenomenal in its first year, but it's what's next. Once his body is fully there, so his mind's there.
Jared, he had 40 touches.
No.
40 touches.
And he's not playing midfield yet.
He had
really?
40 touches. I mean, there's players that play 200 games that never get 40 touches. Like, it's just, I know numbers now are not what they always were. They're probably, there's a lot of meaningless possessions in there, but to kick 3 goals, to kick goals when they're absolutely needed, team in trouble, never too young to lead, Gerard. And look, I'm with you on that. We had a chat last night. How many Brownlow factor players have you got in your team? So those that are 23 and under or 24 and under, the next wave. Don't give me Oliver and Petrarch and those guys. I understand that.
The Chad, that sort of thing.
Yeah,
Chad Warner. Daicos, yep.
Guys like Sarong or Will Day, Newcombe, could they get to that level? Tom Green, Shea Bolton. Is Isaac Rankin going to get there? I don't know. Is Noah Anderson going to get there? I'm not sure. Like a wild card pick, like Nick Martin, could he get to that level for Essendon? Because they're goal-kicking, high-volume possession midfielders. So I think, when you're talking Nick Daicos, he's straight into that conversation. I know he's a high pick. I get all that. But to automatically say this guy is probably going to lead the Brownlow count for Collingwood this year. I mean, who would have votes in front of him at the moment? It's going to be fascinating, Brownlow. Yeah. And the Brownlow's not everything, but it is to you, actually, I should say. He's going to be part of 6 of your multis.
He's going to be in a multi.
He's going to be in a multi.
Exciting.
You know what? I'm actually pleased because it'll be the first time you've left Brodie Grundy out of it, which has been a bugbear in the past. But
it's the dawn of a Hall of Fame career, I think. There's not many you say right at the start. What is it? Over 15 years, what's this going to be? I think he's incredible.
So where to and how quickly is my question.
Yeah.
So come first final, can you see him being in the midfield? Look, we're 18 games in, 17 games in.
This is where, so the difference to being in a good team as opposed to a poor team is that it mightn't be best for Collingwood to have him in the midfield come the first final. But at the start of 2024, he's going to play 90% of his footy in the midfield. And that's where it really gets going. So this is year one. His trajectory, in my imagination, is just anything.
Yeah.
Off a base that I don't think I've ever seen before.
So this is why we're impatient, right? We're always impatient. We're always looking for the next thing. Like they're getting a great return out of what they've got right now. Yeah. I understand that. So why tinker with it? Good question. But if you can kick 3 goals and have 40 playing halfback midfield split, what can you do playing midfield forward split? Those returns are ridiculous. So in a final, do you want to challenge the kid to go and be the reason? I think you do. I'm sure Craig McRae will. I'm sure that he will say, hey, go and win us this one. His language is think like winners, prepare like winners, perform like winners. So in the back of my mind, I can see the little Brisbane Lions champ saying, going to challenge this kid to be more than what he is.
The worst bit of the weekend came at the end, and that was Gold Coast's performance. So we're going to plaudits to Essendon shortly. But just the Suns first. So a week on from that win, they were pitiful.
Is there any danger they'll start at the first siren at some stage this year? And I that's a serious question because they've been 3-4 goals down at the start of games regularly. I think Stuart Dew needs to address that. That's a leadership problem for me on field. Not necessarily. Everyone talks about warm-ups and that sort of stuff. I'm not sold on that because I don't know whether you can pick a good warm-up or a bad one.
Yep.
But that's leadership. That's what are you saying to the group before you walk to positions? Are you eyeballing? Are you challenging? Are you saying, hey, we're on here, we've got to go? Or are you just waiting to see what the opposition throw at you first? That's a flawed policy. So whatever they've been doing hasn't worked. Time for change. And that's on the boys that were in here this morning, Jared Witt, Sam Collins, Took Miller, those sorts of guys. Because they've dropped the ball here. They were one of the best stories of the season, the Suns. And now they've made it so difficult for themselves. Can they gather?
Well, they can, but that's the opportunity was before them to ride that momentum, and they regressed. Regression is so disappointing. And if they'd gone under in a thriller, I could have worn that. But that was poor. Curiosity is obviously Essendon. So this is 4 out of 5 now since the Small R review was called. So a loss to Carlton, then a win to St Kilda and a loss to West Coast. And now they've peeled off Sydney, the Lions, and Gold Coast. They're a curiosity, David King.
So I'll ask you the question. All right? Is what makes you strong the reason why you're weak? So they're so aggressive, so up-tempo and rip, tear and bust off half-back and through the middle of the ground and overlap and go. And if you think you can get involved again, keep running. So their half-backs regularly enter forward 50, regularly. And I don't know, you have to do a deeper study into whether there's cover dropping in behind to allow for that to happen. So the wingman dropping back in to say to Redman, you keep going. And to say to Hind, you keep going. Because when it works, it is beautiful. That's the best our game can look when it works. So that's why, last 6 weeks, number 1 scoring team. If you give them the ball, they're the best team in the competition and putting that possession onto the scoreboard. Top 2 forward 50. Number 1 coast-to-coast team in the comp. So good, so good. Yet, when they lose possession of the ball, all those guys are offside runners. Their opponents, and we know what forwards are like, they don't always chase with their best integrity, Jared. They're all goal side. So they're AFL 12th at stopping coast to coast. They're AFL 12th at defensive. All the defensive numbers are bottom 6 in the comp. So you've got to work out what's more likely to win you games of football. Mm-hmm. And we know the answer to this. And that's why they sit bottom whatever on the table. It's why they're not going to be a finals team. Is because the likelihood of winning games of football comes through how you defend and how hard you are to play against. I don't know why they're so aggressive. Because if you look at their ability to win contest post-clearance, number 1 in the comp the last 6 weeks. You look at their ability to score, outscore their opponent from clearance, number 2 in the competition the last 6 weeks. So those 2 facets alone, if you are remotely sound defensively, should have you into the finals. It should. That's been Carlton for the year. So I don't know why they feel they have to be so aggressive, so manic. Slow things down. It'll still work out on offense. It'll still work out, I guarantee you. But they have this belief that it has to be a highlight reel every time. Mason Redman will win their best and fairest this year, and his highlight tape, best and fairest night, will look unbelievable.
Yes.
He'll look like Andrew McLeod coming off half-back flank. But it suits the player, but does it suit the team? Like Ben Rutten would have to sit back and say, we're doing so much right. How are we here? It's the psychology of how they want to play that's wrong.
So is what they're doing now the precursor to being successful next year?
See, this is the discussion, right?
This is the whole discussion with them. So you blow the first half of your season.
Yeah.
And then we
the
talk
same
about
way as last year.
Yeah, what can be salvaged, and then does it set you up for and this is what makes them the curiosity. Is what they're doing now going to parlay into their success next season.
But it can't, because you have to pull back offensively. So you've got to give up some of those numbers to actually get better when you lose control or lose handle on the footy. So you can't play this way. As good as it is, you can't play this way, or you'll be unemployed as a coach. So I think it's a bit of a nonsense again, and and people will come at me for that, but it does look great, and they did play well, and they did win, but all the reasons why they won, I don't think are sustainable, and you run the risk of getting blown away on all forms of feedback. But until they are defensively sound or give their back six who are undersized an opportunity to defend, I'd hate to play a key position at Essendon in the defence, because every time they turn the ball over, you are at best 1v1 with your opponent, but most likely 4v3, 3v4. So when it's coming down, you're outnumbered and you're undersized. That's a bad mix.
Sydney preliminary final integrity. So they're 6th, 11-6. They've had signature wins, Melbourne at the MCG and now Fremantle in Perth. If you want a draw on the way home, it's Sydney's from here. They've done the heavy lifting. They've got Adelaide, the Giants, North Melbourne, Collingwood and St Kilda on the way in. If you are talking about a team capable of running the table, the Swans are the team capable of running the table. And if they did, what would 16 wins look like for them? But run the PFI. So this is the high-end measure. Is what they're doing going to stack up on the penultimate weekend of the year?
Ooh, is what they're doing going to stack up? Well, let's look at what they're doing. So their ability to move the ball, the ability to make you pay. Excuse me, sneeze, Jared.
Right.
To make you pay, second best in the competition behind the Bombers. Okay, so we're talking about Essendon being brilliant and scoring. So Sydney are an eighth of an inch behind them, right? But without the footy. So it's done a different way. It's done with a bit more care, a bit more patience. Without the footy, they're top 6. Winning contest, they're top 4. Their only flaw, and we're going to keep banging on about this until the season's run and done, is clearances. So they've won one of their last 5 clearance battles, and that was +1 against the West Bulldogs. So they hardly brained them, okay? So they're in awful trouble there. So more often than not, the opposition are starting with the ball. So if you start with the ball 10 more times a game, well, logic says you're a greater chance of winning. So I look at Warner, and he has 7 clearances on the weekend. I think, is he the man? Have we been talking about the wrong guy? Are we waiting for Luke Parker and it's Chad Warner? Are we waiting for one of their senior players to do it when it might be the kid? I hope it is, because if Chad Warner can hold this clearance game for a patch, for a period of time, they finish top 4. And then they're a serious threat, because the coaching of this group, I think they're one of the most coachable groups in the comp. When you see what they did on the weekend, so they're still experienced. That's the one thing we're probably sleeping on. They're top 5, top 6 in the comp for experience on the weekend, and they play a different way to what they not overly difficult, different, but the method of, if there's something free, hit it. Sometimes you can go over the top with those sorts of instructions and not actually move the ball forward. You just end up chipping it around and it becomes a bit of a nonsense. And you say, "Hey boys, you're taking my message too far." But they have the ability to chop and change, and that's why John Longmire. Did you see him after the game?
Yes.
That was a win that he was invested in. I mean, all coaches are invested, but I think he understood the what this does to their season. The size of this win to the 2022 season for Sydney can't be understated. They're a serious threat, Jared.
I think it's one of those weeks where it just makes sense. I'll be surprised if our seedings don't marry up. It's a measure of what's before us right now. It's got nothing to do with forecasting or prognosticating. What's before us right now? David King, who's for?
So please hold the feedback. I don't need it. I'm emotional today. I'm tired, Jared. At 4, I've got the Sydney Swans.
So do I.
With a bullet. I didn't think I'd have them in the top 6 at this stage of the year, but 4. You got them at 4 as well.
Yep. Been the hardest team to peg, but profoundly impressed with Saturday night. And yeah, their game is in order.
And they like big games too.
They do.
At 3, I've gone the Pies.
So have I.
You have?
Yep.
Wow.
8 in a row. They demand a place.
Well, their profile is And people say they haven't played anyone. You don't win 8 in a row in this competition playing no one. That's just crazy. That's nonsense. At 2, I've got the D's.
So do I.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
Oh, this is ridiculous. I'm worried about the D's. I am worried about the D's. I'm glad they got out of jail on the weekend against Port Adelaide because you want the ladder to give us the best final series we can. But there's a stone in my shoe at the moment. Does that mean you've got at number 1 who I think you've got at number 1?
So they're the carryover champs, Sale of the Century style. They moved to 1 for me last week.
How old is that?
The carryover champ.
It hasn't been on TV for 20 years.
Geelong's 1.
Yeah, Geelong are 1, and assets everywhere, point of difference everywhere. And I am starting to think there right now is a big gap between 1 and 2.
Okay.
Big gap. Some work to do for the chasing pack.
1 Geelong, 2 Melbourne, 3 Collingwood, 4 Sydney. I just think those seedings make sense. It's one of those rare occasions during the year where they just make sense.
I nearly went the old daylight. You know how we use daylight at the start of the year? I nearly went 1 daylight, Melbourne, Collingwood. I wanted to put Sydney in. But there is a gap, Jared.
Our seedings awarded CanStar's most trusted energy providers nationally in 2021-2022. That's Red Energy.
You know what you're going to hear now? The most overrated term in AFL football?
This is the last refuge of the desperate.
Mathematically possible. Still mathematically possible. Essendon make the 8, Jared.
Good times.